Hello, everybody. It's Holger Mueller here from Constellation Research, here in the second week of the data analytics lakehouse vendors with my partner in crime, Michael Nee, who again was the person on the ground in where? San Francisco, Mike? Where were you?
It was in San Francisco, another Moscone, and back to the Intercontinental. So it was actually spot on the same location. I even went to my wrong room.
Which week did you have the better room?
Well, I'm not going to name the competition from today's conversation, but yes, my previous week had
Who spent more money on marketing then? It's great it's the same venue, and 1 week later, who spent more on marketing? What do you think?
Well, certainly, I think DataBricks had the bigger show. And so you had certainly a different feel as you move from analysts to an army of data engineers really wanting to geek out on what DataBricks had to offer.
No. So not really comparable. But spend per attendee, DataBricks more?
You know, that one's going to be hard to say. I think Snowflake tried to layer on some of the goodies. But I think what's interesting is actually the history of the event. And actually, this is where Ali Ghosli started the event, which was, what was it, back in 2013 or 14 or so?
Yep.
It was the Spark Summit, 5,000 people. Now it went to the Spark and AI Summit. And now it's a data and AI Summit with 22,000 folks, just reflective of some of that momentum. And, retelling a story on just the idea of data intelligence, really getting to know the meaning of data, and certainly something that's still part of the core vision of what he's delivering.
Yeah, amazing history starting with Spark, right, which had a lot of attention, and keeping that going. And what I like about DataBricks is like there's a clear architectural roadmap and things are fitting into place and evolving from year to year. And you can see the trajectory. And the cool thing is nobody could have foreseen AI as much as is prominent right now 3 years ago, 2 years ago even, or 1 year ago potentially. And it all fits nicely together. But you were there. So what are your top 3 takeaways? Let's start with the first one.
Well, we'll see if we can stop at 3 because there was something that the customers asked for a lot. And so I made it 3.5. But first and foremost, it's really that shift to your point around this shift towards agentic, because you're really going from analytics platform to decision platforms. And this is where DataBricks is no longer, just a lake house. It's aiming to be at the end-to-end decisioning platform, owning the meaning behind the data. And that's what we were just talking about. And, that's just building that trust foundation across, analytics, AI, ML, and then of course, apps itself. But, I think a couple key points really validate that in terms of their announcements. You had Lakebase, OLTP in the Lakehouse, which is now Databricks is now targeting real-time operational workloads, filling out that ability to cover not only analytic and increasing in the ML AI pieces, but also the operational workloads. And that was a key announcement. And we saw that announcement with Neon, but really building it in and delivering on Lakehouse, which is their new offering there. With that, in terms of being this platform, is DataBricks One, right? They deliver sort of that one UI that allows for non-technical entry points for decision intelligence. This gets you that Gen AI and BI applications and an interface for non-technical users. And again, being that decision platform, the third piece of that was, of course, the semantics governing layer. You don't have to go too far before you start running into hallucination with agents, before your self-service analytics really starts to need to know what the meaning of the data is. And this was a very strong push from DataBricks, which is Unity Catalog. And in this case, Unity Catalog Metrics is a new addition, which provides embedded semantic governance. In this case, centralized definition of business metrics, think ARR, think what does bookings mean, and to actually bring it down from what typically semantics lives, which is BI tool specific layers. And this builds on that whole ability from their side, DataBricks side, to do knowledge extraction from the data you actually use. And of course, why does this matter? It's not just about unifying OLTP and OLAP. This is DataBricks saying that, we're your AI operating system from ingestion to insight to interface across those 3 areas.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, right? So the analytics to transactional leap is leaving, is gone, is no longer relevant, right? So because the agents will write transactional records and they have to write them somewhere, and you can't wait for the source systems to be available and change streamer. So the agent building system has to have the ability to write transactional records on top of what they're doing on the AI side anyway. So everybody is racing. We used to be an analytics vendor to be a transactional vendor for the sake of agents, all along that vision, like most famous one on record, right? Satya Nadella saying like agent AI will be the end of SaaS. well, it can only be the end of SaaS if there's a very strong transactional capabilities on those platforms as well. And we see that in the announcements from last week and this week, that's exactly what's happening.
Well, what I think is interesting here is that, that whole Neon acquisition reflected that sort of this new workload, which is agentic. And like, I think the stats are very telling. Last year, Neon saw 30% of their workloads or their databases spun up automatically by agents or by AI automation. This year, it's 80%. And they're projecting even more going forward. And this is clearly an attack, one, on taking out, the kind of OLTP workloads, getting off of sort of more legacy cloud databases. But it also, starts delivering down on, I think, where DataBricks really wants to go. And it started from Lakehouse, but really, why is Oracle not in their sights as well? But we can leave that for another day.
Well, Oracle has to make official, right? They have one official lake on the analytics side, right, which they announced September last year, right? So all these OTP stuff, of course, questions where is Oracle going to be in the combination of the two, and will be interesting and will be hard also, and from my perspective, because market leaders try to do the same thing in the last to adopt, right? They're not the first to adopt and saw off the branch they're sitting on and making millions and billions of revenue from. So it will be interesting when the trigger in Nashville, right? The Oracle headquarters no longer on Red Oak Shores like we know it, or in Austin. No, it's now in Nashville. When someone in Nashville wake up, or maybe in Hawaii, probably that's where Larry's so time to figure out, hey, we have to do an overall encompassing lakehouse, and everything missing the transactional database can be in that data lakehouse, whatever it's going to be called. Yeah.
Right. There's no one displacing Oracle in the short term, but can you carve off branches of it that you can own as well?
How was the energy? How were people excited?
Energy was great. I mean, it was exciting. I think the data engineers and the audience really got into all the pieces they saw. And what's interesting is, before we get too much into the goodies for the data engineers, actually, I think we saw something that was a really push up the stack towards owning agents, right? Mosaic was last year, giving them sort of that full tool set for building agents. This year, DataBricks was the story. And we think about it, it's really around addressing the question of how do you move from POCs to really productionized agents. In this case, the trust that's needed to do that. You think about last year we had Mosaic build a SaaS as a tool set for this. Now think about DataBricks as SaaSification of the creation of agents, which is starting off as with what is your objective, and being able to treat it as helping you build your own agents, but starting off with what's the end goal and how do we generate these judges that will continuously evaluate. How do you think about synthetic data generation? It'll look at your data that's used to train the agent you want, and it will say, okay, you don't have enough data to get to the level of grounding we need. It'll generate the data you need for enterprise data sets. And again, automatic optimization. You see their measures of accuracy. And again, that's an internal measure, but how do they continue to outperform based upon a trusted approach, which not only grounds your agents, but also continues to self-optimize with loops with human in the loop, right? So it goes beyond just inference or simple LLM access, or even just training tool sets, which is where we've all been in the last couple of years. It's really about full agent lifecycle management.
I always like that there's agent frameworks, and when you can talk about trust and grounding issues. We've talked too much about trusting hallucination issues when there was not even software which could make things hallucinate from vendors. So it's a good problem to have, luxury problem now to have the capabilities. And I think it's going to be the productivity of the agent frameworks, which will play a huge role where you're going to put your data in which lakehouse in the cloud, right? And it's going to
this is where it's just getting real. I mean, I think that we've all been talking about the stuck in POC purgatory where a lot of these things have been. And I think this is an attempt by DataBricks to ship agents that can be pushed into production and be trusted to do so with cost controls and trust baked in. Yeah.
And it's a question, that's an interesting thing of our time right now, that the lake houses, data lake houses, whatever, make everything, they level everything, they throw everything in there, right? It's the analytics vendor, it's the data platform vendors, it's the ERP vendors, it's the CRM vendors, it's the tool platform vendors. And all of that has to come together, either through acquisitions like we've seen this week, or through partnerships, or through organic development. And the competition is on for that. It's going to be interesting who's going to be the trusted winner, market leader for building agents in 25 and beyond, and out of which camp they come. Yeah, it's going to be
well, and this is where from this whole season of announcements, you're seeing everyone trying to establish themselves as that data and AI, platform, that new operating system. And I think we're just, we're getting to the middle phases here, as Satya was saying, where you're getting standards actually locking down and people are getting real about the choices they're making and how to get to real ROI as well. And so I think this also gets to your point, actually gets to my third point, which was pipeline productivity without compromising governance. And this is, like you said, all coalescing in governance. That big G is there, which is you have the Lakeflow, and what's new this year. So Lakeflow went GA this year, but what's new is Lakeflow Designer, targeting this classic problem of how do we let analysts move fast without creating chaos for the engineers, right? Again, if anything, this just gets, this got a ton of applause, by the way. This whole idea of being able to address the ETL problem, a ton of applause from the data engineers in the room who really know the number of tools and the pain to set up and manage very brittle data pipelines over time. No one likes this part. And seeing DataBricks address this was something that got a lot of excitement from the folks in the audience. But also it's what CDAOs and data owners will certainly appreciate, which is governed pipelines that both technical and non-technical teams can use that addresses some of that shadow IT, which often pops up around this type of data pipelining.
And you address a very important point, right? While you're in this land grab move to who's going to be the agent of the future, if you come up with the data lake, with the object store, whatever camp, analytics camp, whatever you want to label the DataBricks camp, you still have to invest in what you're doing, right? On the ETL side, on the pipeline side, and so on, right? You can't just slack on that and take it for granted because there's real world issues in those capabilities and they're critical. Yeah, we just saw like the acquisition of Informatica for Salesforce as an example, how critical this can be, right? How this comes together, right? You need a good lakehouse, data lakehouse, whatever, right? You need OLAP and OLTP capabilities. You can't forget your traditional analytics customer, right? You have to keep your data operational people happy. You have to keep your data scientists happy. You have to have your agent builder. You become a product developer shop. What did I miss? Like it's 7 areas in which you can stretch, have to invest. So it's a super interesting time. And in my category list before, I didn't mention the cloud vendors. Of course, want you to build it all on their cloud platform, right? Because
of course. Yeah. And motivations aside, well, motivations are never aside. I think what is interesting is, cloud vendors to a certain extent win either way because the workloads come back. And that's why you see so many partnerships now with Databricks and Snowflake with the different hyperscalers for sure. Right. But I think that, what's interesting with Lakeflow, if I could throw one more thing, is it is the fact that they stay true to their open source roots. And in this case, adding declarative pipelines. And this is something you'd appreciate. When they brought in Lakeflow Designer, which is a no-code drag and drop interface to compile sort of SQL Spark for generating these pipelines, it is actually generating it straight into sort of something that developers can actually go and then manipulate. And it's not like a one-way code generation. They're all working on the same abstraction so that it's bi-directional. If the developers are going in or the engineers are going in to change the pipelines, it actually will be reflected in the no-code designer as well. And so they're all working off one set of code and making it just much more maintainable, audible, but also this declarative pipelines was added to Spark 4.1, Apache Spark 4.1. And so now it's all part of the standard or the open standard and all put in and managed within Unity for governance. So this is an interesting play, and it actually pulls in sort of the whole stack, which is both goodies for the engineers and analysts, but also increasing, like that you said, that platform scope and the trust factor, which makes it more and more interesting to use Databricks altogether across all these different workloads.
Right. A great point from you there, and very good for the architecture, because you want to, it's so hard to build working code assets, so you want to reuse it. And then you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by making it so easy to build all different, that the single source of truth again, to power your analytical insights, to power your agents, is not the same, right? There's no hallucination. We just tap into different data files. Oh, different ERP system or whatever, right? Where we got this data from. But we had time, Michael. Super interesting. Thank you for sharing your findings from this week's Databricks Summit, I believe it is, right? It was in San Francisco. Yes. Anything we forgot? Anything important?
Well, I think just I could that 0.5 we talked about at the beginning. We're looking at migration and ecosystem consolidation, and so there was a bunch of other things that came up. Clearly we hit some of the consolidation as you bring data with Lakeflow, but certainly you have LakeBridge, which was part of their acquisition last year, providing LLM powered migrations. They acquired a migration tool, and of course you see things like Zero Bus, which gets you message bus free ingestion, simplifying your streaming stack. Retooling and Streamlit integrations for sort of embedded applications built off of DataBricks. So a bunch of things towards migration and ecosystem consolidation, which just wraps up the point you started with, which is where all these players are going.
Yeah, absolutely right. First, you have to have all the capabilities. Then you have to make it easy for customers to move to your capability, because you, of course, want to dominate the world as every software vendor in the space. And you have to make it easy for other people to come from other people. Come over here. The life is better. The grass.
Yeah, with the promise of interoperability.
Yes,
with the promise of interoperability.
Who would say we build something proprietary? Hey, we're all open source. Everybody can see what we're doing. Perfect. Well, thank you for your fresh takes from this week's DataBricks Summit Analyst, whatever conference where you've been. Thanks for sharing with Michael. Appreciate it. Learned a lot. It was great, as always.
Holger, as always, it's fun.